The girl was 16, thin and quiet, the kind of person people often looked past without noticing. She lived in a small, aging house at the edge of the city, where the paint on the walls was peeling and the windows never seemed to open wide enough to let the sunlight in. After her father passed away 2 years earlier, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a place she survived in, one day at a time. Her name was Aisha. She used to be cheerful when her father was alive. He worked long hours, but he always came home smiling, always asked about her school, and always made sure she ate before he rested. After his death, everything changed. Her stepmother moved through the house like a storm that never ended. In public, she spoke softly and smiled. At home, her voice was sharp. Her eyes were always searching for something to blame on the girl. Every morning, Aisha woke up before sunrise. She cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, washed clothes by hand, and prepared breakfast. She did all this quietly, trying not to make mistakes, because even the smallest error could lead to shouting. Sometimes it did not even take a mistake. Sometimes her stepmother was angry simply because the day had begun. Aisha attended a nearby government school. Her uniform was faded, and her shoes were worn at the edges, but she kept them as clean as she could. School was the only place where she felt a small sense of peace. Her teachers noticed she rarely spoke, but they also noticed she worked hard. She finished her homework on time, often late at night. After all the chores were done, there were days when she came to school with marks on her arms or a quiet pain in her walk. When asked, she always said she had fallen or bumped into something. She had learned early that telling the truth often made things worse. Silence, though heavy, felt safer. The neighbors sensed something was wrong. They heard shouting late at night and saw Aisha carrying heavy bags that seemed too much for her small frame. But in their minds, it was a family matter. No one wanted trouble. No one wanted to be involved. So the doors stayed closed and the windows stayed shut one evening. After returning from school, Aisha found her stepmother in a bad mood. The electricity had gone out, the room was hot, and nothing seemed right. The stepmother accused her of misplacing some money from the kitchen drawer. Aisha knew nothing about it. She stood still, her hands shaking, trying to explain, but her words came out weak and broken. The shouting grew louder. Plates were moved roughly. Harsh words filled the room. Aisha felt the familiar fear rise in her chest. She tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. The house felt smaller than ever, closing in on her. That night ended with Aisha locked in her room without dinner. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, her stomach aching with hunger. She thought about her father and wondered how life could change so completely. Tears slipped quietly into her pillow, but she made no sound. Crying out loud never helped. The next morning, she woke up even earlier than usual. She washed her face, hid her pain behind a calm expression, and prepared breakfast. Her stepmother ate, without saying a word. Aisha packed her school bag and left the house quickly, feeling relief as soon as the door closed behind her. That day at school felt longer than usual. Her head was heavy, and her body felt weak. She struggled to focus on her lessons. During lunch break, she sat alone, eating the small piece of bread she had brought from home. Other students laughed and talked nearby, but their world felt far away from hers. When school ended, dark clouds had already gathered in the sky. The wind was strong, and rain began to fall as she walked home. Her clothes slowly became wet, and the cold made her shiver. She wished she could stay out longer, delay going back. But she knew that would only make things worse. As she reached her street, she noticed people standing outside, talking loudly. Her heart beat faster. She lowered her head and tried to pass quietly. But before she could reach the gate, her stepmother's voice cut through the noise, loud and angry. The stepmother accused her of stealing again, this time in front of everyone. The words were harsh, filled with blame and shame. Aisha tried to speak, but her voice was lost in the noise. People began to stare. Some pulled out their phones, sensing drama. Aisha felt her face burn with embarrassment and fear. She had never been shouted at like this in public before. At home, yes. But here in the open, with strangers watching, it felt unbearable. Her stepmother grabbed her arm roughly. Aisha winced and tried to pull away, begging softly for her to stop. The rain fell harder. The street became slippery. Ayasa's school bag fell to the ground, books spilling into the water. No one stepped forward. Some watched with curiosity, others with discomfort. The girl felt completely alone, surrounded by people yet unseen. Her stepmother's anger seemed endless. Every word felt like a blow. Aisha's legs felt weak, her body trembling. She wondered if this was how her life would always be, a cycle of fear with no escape. Across the street, among the small crowd, stood a man who did not belong there by accident. He was dressed simply, without showing who he really was. He had stopped his car when he saw the gathering. At first, he thought it was just another street argument. But then he noticed the girl's face, pale and frightened, and the way she was being treated. He watched quietly for a moment, his expression changing. He had seen many things in life, had dealt with power and money, but something about this moment felt different. This was not about wealth or status. This was about a child being broken in front of the world. Aisha felt dizzy. The rain mixed with her tears, and everything around her blurred. She could hear voices but could not understand them clearly. She knew only one thing. She wanted the shouting to stop. As the crowd grew, so did the tension. The moment stretched, heavy and painful. What none of them knew was that this scene, so ordinary in its cruelty, was about to change many lives. The girl did not know it yet, but someone had truly seen her for the first time. And in that quiet moment, standing in the rain, the world was about to listen. The rain poured harder, turning the street into a shiny, slippery path. And the girl felt her strength fading with every step she tried to take away from her stepmother's grasp. She was trembling, soaked, and her heart was beating faster than ever before. Her body wanted to run, but fear had rooted her to the spot. The shouting around her became a blurry noise, a storm of anger that made her small voice disappear completely. Her stepmother's grip was firm and harsh. The crowd watched quietly, some recording the scene on their phones, not sure if they should intervene. They whispered among themselves, wondering what had happened, and the girl could feel their eyes but could not feel their help. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the rainy street and be free of the pain and humiliation. And then a hand appeared. It was firm, steady, and different from anyone else's around. The girl looked up, her wet hair sticking to her face, and saw a man stepping forward from the crowd. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a seriousness that made the world around him feel smaller, quieter. He didn't shout. He didn't push. He simply reached out, guiding the stepmother's hands away gently but firmly. For a moment, the stepmother was shocked. She blinked, as if she hadn't expected anyone to challenge her in public. The girl took a step back, her heart pounding. She could barely believe what was happening. Someone was actually stopping the cruelty she had learned to accept as normal. Someone was seeing her pain and acting on it. The man spoke softly, but with authority. He told the stepmother to let go, to step aside, to calm down. His voice was not angry, but it carried a power that made the words impossible to ignore. Slowly, hesitantly, the stepmother released her grip and took a step back. The girl's body relaxed slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. The rain fell on them both, but somehow it no longer felt as cold to the girl. She could feel someone was truly there, not just a stranger watching, but someone who cared about what was happening. The crowd began to murmur, noticing the change. Sensing that this moment was different from the usual arguments that ended in silence, the girl tried to speak, but her throat felt tight, and the words came out as a small, shaky sound. The man crouched slightly to her level, offering a calm smile, and asked if she was okay. She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice yet. She wanted to explain everything, all the pain she had felt, but the words felt trapped, too heavy to escape. He nodded gently, not pushing her to speak, and reached into his pocket to call someone. Within moments, it seemed like help was already on its way. The man stayed by her side, offering quiet comfort, shielding her from the angry stares of the stepmother and the whispers of the crowd. He didn't try to be a hero or a savior. He simply acted as if it was the most natural thing in the world to protect someone who was being hurt. the girl felt a small spark of hope. For the first time in years, she realized that there could be someone outside her immediate world who would stand up for her. Someone who could see her suffering without judgment. The fear that had been with her every day seemed to lessen just a fraction, replaced by a fragile sense of safety. The stepmother began to argue. Her voice still sharp and loud, but it was different now. She realized that the scene was being recorded, and her authority over the girl was no longer absolute. The man's presence had shifted the balance. The girl could feel it. The stepmother's anger seemed less certain, more forced, as if she was aware that her control had been broken. Finally, the stepmother gave a frustrated huff and walked away, still mumbling complaints but no longer touching the girl. The crowd began to disperse slowly, some shaking their heads, some still staring, some quietly nodding to themselves at what had happened. The girl stayed where she was, soaked and shivering, but no longer feeling completely alone. The man turned to her, offering his coat without saying much. She hesitated for a moment, then accepted it. The warmth of the fabric against her cold, wet skin felt like the first real comfort she had felt in a long time. He guided her to a nearby bench where she could sit and regain some strength. He didn't ask for her story immediately. He simply waited patiently, giving her time to breathe, to calm down. After a few minutes, she began to speak in small, broken sentences. She told him about her life, about the fear at home, about the daily chores, and the nights she spent hungry and alone. She spoke quietly, but the words poured out, one by one, like a dam breaking. The man listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging. He simply acknowledged her pain, letting her know that it was real and that someone cared. As she spoke, passers-by began to notice the scene. Some stopped, some offered umbrellas, some whispered encouragement. The rain continued to fall, but the atmosphere felt less harsh, less punishing. People could see the vulnerability of the girl, but also the calm presence of the man who had stepped forward when no one else had. Soon, an ambulance arrived, called by the man earlier. Medical staff helped her out of the wet clothes, checked her for injuries, and provided blankets and water. The man stayed with her the entire time, offering reassurance, making sure she felt safe. The girl realized that this was not a temporary kindness. This was a commitment to her safety. It changed the way she saw the world. The stepmother had disappeared, but her shadow lingered in the girl's mind. She knew there would be fear waiting for her when she returned home, but now she had hope. Hope that there was someone who could help, someone who could stand up for her. Hope that the world was not entirely cruel. The kindness could exist even in the smallest, quietest acts. As the ambulance drove her to a safe place, the man followed quietly in his car. He didn't ask for her gratitude or try to show off his wealth or power. He simply ensured she was safe, that she had food, and that she would not have to return to that same fear immediately. The girl felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. For years, she had lived in fear of everyone around her, and now someone had become her protector without expecting anything in return. At the safe house, she was given a warm meal, dry clothes, and a bed that felt soft under her exhausted body. The man checked in, not as a stranger, but as someone who genuinely cared. He told her that she deserved safety, respect, and a chance to live without fear. The words were simple, but for the girl, they felt like a lifeline. As night fell, the girl reflected on the day. The fear, the pain, and the long hours of survival had not disappeared completely, but they were quieter now. Someone had seen her struggle and acted. Someone had stepped into the storm not to show power, but to offer protection. And for the first time in a long time, the girl felt that maybe, just maybe, life could be different. Maybe someone could care enough to make a difference, even when the world seemed indifferent. And as she drifted to sleep under the warm blanket, she realized that the moment in the rainy street had changed everything. It was not just about escaping fear. It was about being seen, being heard, and being treated like a human being deserving of kindness. That realization was the first step toward a life that might finally have hope. The next morning, the girl woke up to a quiet room, warm sunlight gently coming through the window. It was the first morning in a long time that she did not feel the cold weight of fear pressing on her chest. She stretched carefully, noticing how her body felt less tense, as if the night had helped wash away some of the pain from the day before. She realized she was still in a safe place, surrounded by people who wanted to help her, and that thought brought a strange, new kind of comfort. The man who had helped her was there again, quietly sitting nearby. He did not demand attention or try to make her feel awkward about what had happened. Instead, he offered a calm presence, like a steady anchor in the storm of her life. He explained gently that she did not have to return to the house immediately, and that there were authorities who could help protect her. His words were soft, but they carried weight. For the first time, she understood that she was not alone in facing the dangers at home. He asked her about her day at school and listened carefully as she spoke. She told him about her classes, her teachers, and the small joys she had found in learning despite the hardships. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger, more confident. She realized that even in the darkness of her past, she had held on to small pieces of hope. The man nodded, encouraging her without saying much, simply letting her feel that her words mattered. Later, they went to meet the officials, who were assigned to help her. She felt nervous walking into a building filled with strangers who would be making decisions about her life. But the man stayed with her, holding the coat over her shoulders to keep her warm, and occasionally offering reassuring smiles. His presence reminded her that she had someone who believed in her, someone who would stand by her even when others had not. The officials listened to her story with seriousness and care. They asked questions gently, allowing her to explain in her own words without rushing or pressuring her. They seemed shocked at the details she shared, but they did not react with disbelief or doubt. Their focus was on her well-being and on making sure she was safe from further harm. For the first time, she felt that adults could be allies, not just people who ignored her pain. The man explained that there would be steps taken to protect her legally. Her stepmother could be held accountable, and she would no longer have to live in constant fear. He also made it clear that she had choices, that she could speak up, and that her voice would be heard. This was a new experience for her, one that felt strange but empowering. She realized that she had never truly been given a chance to be heard before. After the meeting, they returned to the safe place. The man had arranged for her to continue her studies without interruption. Teachers would help her catch up, and she would have access to resources she had never imagined. She felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. For years, she had accepted that her education was something fragile, something that could be taken away or ignored. Now, it felt like a gift, a bridge to a future she had only dreamed of. The girl spent the afternoon unpacking her thoughts and feelings. She wrote quietly in a notebook, putting her fears, hopes, and memories onto paper. Writing had always been a private escape for her, a way to make sense of a world that often felt harsh and unfair. Today, however, she wrote with a sense of purpose. She wrote for herself, but also for the first time she imagined that someone else might read and understand her journey. The act of writing became a small act of reclaiming her life. Evening arrived, and the safe house became a place of calm routines. Dinner was simple but nourishing, and she felt the warmth of food without the fear that usually accompanied it at home. The man checked in periodically, making sure she was comfortable and answering her questions patiently. He did not rush, did not demand gratitude, and did not try to control her. He simply offered support and space, allowing her to feel safe and empowered. The news of the previous day's incident had begun to spread online. Videos recorded by bystanders were circulating quietly at first, and then they gained attention rapidly. People were sharing the story, expressing shock at what had happened, and praising the courage of the man who had intervened. The girl did not know much about it, but she began to understand that her experience had touched others. She realized that her suffering, once invisible, was now seen by the world. The man explained gently that public attention could be both positive and overwhelming. He reassured her that she did not have to face it alone, and that her safety and well-being remained the priority. He helped her understand that the attention was a tool, not a burden, and that it could help ensure justice and support for her situation. She began to see that the world was not entirely indifferent. People could respond with care and action. As the evening grew darker, she felt tired but more at ease than she had in years. She thought about the days she had spent in fear, the nights when hunger and loneliness had been constant companions. in the moments when hope seemed impossible to find. Now she could see a future that included possibility, safety, and a sense of belonging. The small steps taken by the man and the officials were building a foundation she could stand on before going to bed. The man sat with her once more. He reminded her that her journey would not be easy, that challenges might still come, but that she now had allies and support. He emphasized that her voice, her choices, and her courage mattered more than the cruelty she had endured. The words were simple, but they carried a powerful message that she would remember for years. As she closed her eyes, she felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and hope. The night was quiet, but for the first time in a long time, she felt protected and valued. She knew that the coming days would require strength and patience, but she also knew that she would not face them alone. The sense of security and trust she had begun to experience was a new feeling, one that she had almost forgotten existed. The rain had stopped. Leaving the streets wet and shining under the morning light, she imagined walking through the city without fear, attending school without dread, and one day returning to a life where she could make choices for herself. The small sparks of hope she had felt during the day had grown into a quiet flame, one that promised that the darkness of the past could eventually be replaced by light. And as she drifted into sleep that night, she understood something important, that the moments of kindness, protection, and belief in her worth had changed more than just her safety. They had begun to change the way she saw herself, her potential, and her place in the world. That realization, quiet and steady, was the first step toward a life filled with possibility, courage, and hope. The following days were a mix of relief and uncertainty for the girl. She woke up each morning in a safe place, a warm bed replacing the cold mattress she had grown used to. Each day felt different because she knew she was no longer alone. She was no longer at the mercy of the fear that had controlled her life for so long. But the thought of facing her stepmother again, even legally, filled her with apprehension. She wondered how the woman could act without remorse, and why someone she had once called family could be so cruel. The man who had helped her stayed in close contact. He arranged for her to meet with professionals who could guide her through the legal steps to ensure her protection. She learned that there were rules and systems in place designed to help children like her, and that for the first time, she would not be invisible. Every meeting was intimidating at first, but she found that the people she met were patient and kind, asking her questions gently and making sure she understood what was happening. One afternoon, they discussed the steps to take against her stepmother. She listened as her advocate explained that a case could be opened and the woman could be held accountable for the abuse. The girl felt a mix of fear and relief. Fear because the confrontation could be difficult. Relief because finally there could be consequences for the years of pain she had endured. The man reassured her that she would not face this alone and that her feelings and safety were most important. The girl also began to see a new routine forming. She attended school again, now with arrangements to help her catch up on missed lessons. Teachers took extra care to make her feel included and capable. The small achievements in class, finishing an assignment, participating in a discussion, brought her confidence bit by bit. For the first time, she felt that learning could be a source of strength rather than a task to escape from. While adjusting to school and safety, she also spent time reflecting on her past. She wrote in her notebook about her father and how he had tried to protect her. She thought about the moments of fear, the nights spent awake listening to the sounds of the house, and the small victories she had managed to claim on her own. Writing became more than a habit. It was a way to process her life, to understand the feelings she had buried for so long. Despite the support around her, there were moments of doubt and sadness. Sometimes she would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why life had been so unfair to her. She thought about her stepmother, the harsh words, the punishments, and the fear that had been a constant companion. But now, she could also think about the kindness she had received, the people who had stood up for her, and the possibility of a life that was not defined by cruelty. The legal process began with small steps. Statements were taken, documents were prepared, and a court date was set. The girl was nervous, imagining her stepmother in a courtroom, seeing her face and pretending that nothing had happened. But the man who had helped her reminded her that she was not powerless, that she had truth and support on her side. This reassured her and gave her courage to face what was ahead. Each day, she learned more about her rights and the support available to her. She met with counselors who taught her how to express her feelings safely, how to deal with anxiety, and how to trust people again. These sessions were new to her, and at first, she struggled to open up. But gradually, she began to see the benefit of talking to someone who would listen without judgment. The girl also started to notice small changes in herself. She walked taller, spoke more confidently, and smiled a little more freely. It was not a sudden transformation. It was gradual, like the first light of dawn creeping into a dark room. Each moment of safety, each act of kindness, reinforced the idea that she could be strong, that she could survive and even thrive. The man continued to play a quiet but steady role in her life. He was not just a helper in emergencies. He became a mentor in small ways, guiding her decisions without taking over. He encouraged her to set small goals, like finishing her homework on time, trying a new activity, or simply speaking up when she felt unsure. Each small step was celebrated, building her sense of self-worth in ways she had never experienced before. As the court date approached, the girl felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. She knew she would have to face her stepmother, possibly recounting painful memories. But she also knew she was not alone, that she had allies who would protect her and ensure she was treated fairly. The support around her created a cushion of safety, giving her courage to face the situation head-on. When the day arrived, she was accompanied to the court by the man and other trusted adults. The courtroom was intimidating, with its large benches, high ceilings, and serious faces. But she felt a surprising calm, knowing she was supported and that justice had a chance to be served. The proceedings began, and she listened carefully, feeling the power of truth being recognized and taken seriously. The stepmother's reaction was noticeable. She tried to maintain composure, but the evidence witnesses, the girl's own statements, made it clear that her actions could no longer be hidden or ignored. The girl realized that for the first time, her voice mattered, and it had weight. Her courage, the small steps she had taken every day to survive, was now transforming into real power. After the hearing, the girl returned to the safe place with a mixture of relief and lingering nerves. She knew that the case was not entirely over, but she also knew that she had taken a critical step toward freedom from fear. The man reminded her to be patient, to trust the process, and to continue focusing on her own growth and healing. His reassurance was steady, like a lifeline connecting her to hope. In the following weeks, she continued school, counseling, and legal preparations. Each day brought new challenges, but also small victories. She completed assignments she had missed, learned new subjects, and built friendships with classmates who were kind and supportive. She began to imagine a life where she could have choices, pursue dreams, and experience joy without constant fear. The girl also started to think about the future more seriously. She considered what she might like to study, what kind of person she wanted to become, and how she could make a difference for others who might be in similar situations. The idea that she could influence her own life was new and powerful. It filled her with a quiet determination to grow, learn, and succeed. Throughout this period, the man's support remained consistent. He did not overwhelm her with attention or force decisions upon her. Instead, he provided guidance, encouragement, and protection when needed. His belief in her ability to overcome adversity became a model for her own self-belief. She began to understand that strength did not always mean fighting alone. It often meant allowing others to help and trusting in the support around you. Evenings were still quiet, but the girl no longer felt the same dread she once did. She could read a book, write in her notebook, or simply rest without fear of being attacked or humiliated. These moments of peace, small as they were, became crucial in helping her rebuild her sense of self and her trust in the world. The consistency of safety and care was slowly transforming the life she had once believed would always be painful, and as she lay in bed each night, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From fear and isolation to safety and hope, she had begun to experience a life that allowed her to dream and plan. She realized that courage was not only about surviving abuse, but also about allowing herself to believe in the possibility of a better future. That understanding, quiet and profound, became the foundation for the next chapter of her life, one where she could grow stronger, healthier, and more confident each day. The girl woke up to the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains, feeling a calm she had never known before. The house around her was quiet, peaceful, and filled with a sense of safety that had been missing from her life for so long. She stretched and noticed that for the first time in years, her body did not feel weighed down by tension and fear. She took a deep breath, letting the calm wash over her, and realized how far she had come since that rainy day on the street. Breakfast was simple but nourishing, and she ate slowly, enjoying each bite. The man who had helped her checked in briefly, offering a reassuring smile before leaving her to get ready for school. She felt a strange mix of independence and support, free to make choices, but knowing there was someone she could rely on. This balance was new to her, and comforting in a way she could barely describe. At school, she walked into the classroom with a confidence that had been slowly building over the past weeks. Teachers greeted her warmly, and classmates nodded or smiled. The girl noticed the difference in how people treated her now. Where she had once felt invisible or ignored, she now felt acknowledged. The small gesture, a shared notebook, a kind comment, smile felt monumental after years of fear and isolation. During lessons, she focused intently. Every answer she gave, every question she asked, felt like a victory. Her mind, once clouded by worry and exhaustion, now had space to think, learn, and imagine. She started to feel proud of her achievements, no matter how small. Completing a difficult problem, reading a page of a book without distraction, or participating in a discussion were all milestones she celebrated quietly in her heart. After school, she returned to the safe place where she had grown accustomed to feeling protected. The man had arranged for her to meet with a mentor, someone who would guide her in building skills and confidence. The mentor welcomed her warmly, and for the first time, she felt that people genuinely believed in her potential. The conversations were patient and encouraging, filled with advice and support that helped her see her own strength and capability. She also continued writing in her notebook, but now the pages reflected more than just fear and sadness. They contained dreams, hopes, and plans for the future. She wrote about her school, the friends she was beginning to trust, and the things she wanted to learn. Writing became a tool for envisioning a life she had never thought possible, a life where she had control over her choices and the freedom to grow. In the weeks that followed, the legal process against her stepmother progressed steadily. Each hearing, each step in court, reinforced the reality that her suffering was acknowledged and that justice was possible. She was nervous before each session, but she also felt a sense of empowerment. She realized that she was no longer powerless. She had a voice, and that voice was being heard. The man who had first helped her continued to play a steady role in her life. He did not overshadow her. He guided and supported her, allowing her to make decisions while providing advice and protection. His consistent presence was a model of care and trust, teaching her that strength could come from both independence and the support of others. Gradually, the girl began to explore activities outside her studies. She discovered a love for art and writing, and she began to participate in small community projects. Each new experience brought excitement and a sense of achievement. She realized that life could be joyful, that there was more to existence than mere survival. These moments, small yet powerful, became a foundation for her confidence and resilience. The day finally came when the court delivered its decision. The girl attended with her support network, holding her notebook tightly, her heart beating fast. The proceedings were serious, but she felt ready. When the verdict was read, confirming that her stepmother would face the consequences for her actions, she felt a rush of relief and empowerment. For the first time, she understood the true meaning of justice, not as punishment alone, but as protection and validation of her worth. After the court decision, the girl felt lighter. She knew her life was not instantly perfect, but she now had the tools, support, and confidence to navigate it safely. She began to think about her goals more concretely, finishing her education, exploring her talents, and helping others who might be in similar situations. The possibilities seemed endless, The fear that had once defined her life was gradually fading. She also reflected on the kindness of the man who had intervened in the rainy street. His actions had not only saved her in that moment, but had opened a path to a life she could finally call her own. His patience, guidance, and unwavering support had taught her that trust and care could exist even in a world that often seemed harsh. She realized that her journey was not only about escaping fear, but about embracing the possibilities of a life filled with compassion, opportunity, and hope. The girl continued her studies and activities, each day building a stronger sense of self. She formed friendships based on respect and shared interests, and she began to enjoy the small joys of everyday life, walking in the park, reading a favorite book, or helping someone in need. Each experience reinforced her belief that life could be meaningful, fulfilling, and safe. Evenings were calm and reflective. She wrote in her notebook about the journey she had taken, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. She understood that while her past had shaped her, it did not define her. She was learning to embrace her strength, her resilience, and her potential. The man continued to check in, not as a guardian controlling her life, but as a supportive presence helping her navigate her new world. Months passed, and the girl continued to grow in confidence and capability. She took pride in her accomplishments, celebrated her successes, and approached challenges with determination. She understood that life would always have difficulties, but she now had the tools, support, and mindset to face them. The fear that had once controlled her life had been replaced with courage and hope. As she lay in bed each night, she reflected on how far she had come. From the moment of fear in the rainy street to the calm of her safe environment, she had traveled a path filled with both pain and hope. She realized that her story, once hidden and silenced, was now one of resilience, courage, and transformation. She understood that her voice mattered, that her experiences could inspire others, and that she had the power to shape her own future. The girl finally understood that life could be different, better, and filled with possibilities. She had been given a chance to grow, learn, and experience safety and care, and she vowed to make the most of it. Each day became an opportunity to explore, create, and dream. The moments of kindness, support, and justice she had received became a foundation for the rest of her life, a life she was ready to embrace fully. With courage, hope, and gratitude, and as she closed her eyes each night, she felt peace for the first time in years. She had survived fear, she had found safety, and she had discovered her own strength. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led her to a place where she could finally imagine a future filled with opportunity, kindness, and happiness. The world, once harsh and unforgiving, now held possibilities she was ready to explore. The girl had come a long way since that rainy day, when her life seemed broken and hopeless. Now, months after the court's decision, she woke up each morning with a sense of purpose. The safe place she had grown accustomed to had become more than just a shelter. It had become a space where she could plan, learn, and imagine a future without fear. She dressed carefully, tidying her uniform, her movements confident yet gentle, a reflection of the inner calm she had started to embrace. School had become more than a routine. Each class was an opportunity to explore new ideas, develop skills, and interact with people who treated her with respect and kindness. Teachers now encouraged her, praising her achievements, and she began to participate more actively in lessons. The small victories, answering a question correctly, presenting a project, or finishing an assignment, brought her joy and a growing sense of self-worth. She realized that learning was not just about survival anymore. It was about building a life she could be proud of. Outside school, she discovered new hobbies and interests. She tried painting, writing stories, and even volunteering in small community activities. Each new experience was a step toward reclaiming her life, building confidence, and forming connections with others who shared her interests. The mentor assigned to guide her continued to offer support, helping her navigate challenges while letting her make her own choices. This guidance nurtured her independence, while still reminding her that she could rely on others for support. The man who had first stepped in during her darkest moment continued to play a steady, guiding role in her life. he did not overshadow her. He was a quiet presence, offering advice and support only when needed. His belief in her potential became a model for her own self-confidence. She began to understand that strength was not just about enduring hardships alone, but also about accepting support and guidance from people who truly cared. One afternoon, she decided to revisit the streets where the incident had first occurred. At first, the thought made her nervous, memories of fear and pain resurfacing. But as she walked, she noticed the same street now felt different. The rain had washed the roads clean, and the bustling city around her seemed full of opportunities rather than threats. She realized that confronting her past, even in small ways, gave her courage and reminded her of how far she had come. She met some of the neighbors along the way who now looked at her with curiosity and respect. Some remembered the incident, and a few even apologized for not intervening before. The girl felt a mix of emotions, but mostly she felt empowered. She had survived, she had been seen, and she had been supported by people who believed in her right to live safely and with dignity. Returning home, she continued to focus on her education and personal growth. Her days were filled with study sessions, creative activities, and moments of reflection. She had developed a routine that balanced responsibility with self-care, learning to appreciate small joys, a hot cup of tea, a good book, the laughter of friends. These moments, once taken for granted by others, had become treasures for her, symbols of a life gradually reshaping itself as she continued to grow. The girl also thought about her future in practical terms. She explored careers she might pursue, skills she wanted to learn, in ways she could help other children who might be facing challenges similar to hers. She envisioned a life where she could make a difference, combining her experiences with her education and talents to create opportunities not only for herself, but for others as well. Her circle of friends expanded slowly, carefully, as she learned to trust people again. Each friendship brought comfort and joy, reinforcing the idea that connection could be safe and meaningful. She began sharing parts of her story selectively, knowing that her experiences could inspire and educate, but also recognizing the importance of protecting her emotional space. Through these connections, she learned the value of empathy, support, and mutual respect. The legal aftermath of her stepmother's actions continued, but now it was a background concern rather than a looming fear. The girl no longer felt powerless in these proceedings. She understood the process and knew she had people advocating for her. This knowledge gave her confidence and allowed her to focus on her growth rather than lingering fear. Months turned into a year. She noticed changes not only in her environment, but within herself. Her voice grew stronger, her steps firmer, and her sense of purpose clearer. She began to dream bigger dreams that included higher education, travel, and contributing to her community. The girl who once felt invisible now imagined a life filled with possibility, hope, and agency. The man who had first intervened remained a figure of quiet mentorship. He celebrated her achievements without overshadowing them, reminded her to be kind to herself, and encouraged her to take measured risks. Through his support, she learned that life could be both challenging and rewarding, that setbacks were opportunities for growth, and that kindness both received and given was a source of strength. One day, she decided to visit the community center where she had first begun volunteering. Children were playing, learning, and laughing, much like she had imagined for herself. She helped guide some of the younger ones, offering them patience and encouragement. Drawing from the understanding she had gained through her own journey, she realized that her experiences, though painful, had prepared her to give back, to help others find safety, confidence, and hope. The girl also took time to nurture her personal interests. Writing became a form of storytelling and self-expression, allowing her to share lessons learned and moments of triumph. Painting and other creative activities provided joy and relaxation, strengthening her sense of self and her connection to the world around her. Each achievement, no matter how small, was a reminder that she could shape her life actively rather than merely reacting to circumstances. Evenings were moments of reflection. She would sit quietly, reviewing her day, writing in her notebook, and setting small goals for the next day. She found peace in these routines, understanding that growth was incremental and that each day offered opportunities to learn, create, and improve. The quiet moments allowed her to process her feelings and celebrate progress without external validation. The girl's relationship with her family past transformed as well. While she could not erase the hurt she had experienced, she learned to acknowledge it without letting it control her present. She understood that healing was not about forgetting, but about reclaiming her sense of self, building a life rooted in safety, trust, and opportunity. She began to see herself as a survivor, resilient, and capable of shaping her own future. Months later, she took a step further by speaking at a small local event, sharing her story in a way that highlighted hope, resilience, and the importance of support. Her voice, once timid and silenced, now carried confidence and authenticity. The audience listened intently, moved not only by her past struggles, but by the determination and courage she exhibited in rebuilding her life. She realized that sharing her journey could empower others, creating ripples of awareness and compassion. As the girl continued her journey, she embraced the idea that life was not simply about surviving hardships, but about thriving despite them. She made conscious choices to nurture her mind, body, and spirit, surrounding herself with people who respected and supported her. She understood that empowerment came not from wealth or status, but from resilience, learning, and meaningful connections. One evening, sitting by the window and watching the sunset, she reflected on the transformation she had undergone. The streets that once seemed cruel and indifferent now felt full of possibility. She had faced fear, found support, navigated challenges, and discovered her own strength. The girl realized that while the past had shaped her, it did not define her. She had become someone who could face the future with courage, kindness, and determination. And as she closed her eyes that night, she felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the safety and support she had received, but for her own resilience and growth. She had journeyed from fear to empowerment, from isolation to connection, and from uncertainty to hope. The girl knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she was ready. Ready to learn, to dream, to help others, and to embrace a future that she was shaping with her own hands, heart, and courage.